And so, you guys, we have the luck and the joy of having Sharri Johnson with us today. We've seen her before. Welcome back, Sharri. Thank you. A couple of quickie little things about her. She opened and operated the first CSL affiliated retreat. And I think that's kind of cool. Published 2 primers on affirmative prayer. Let's see, are those listed right here? Yes, they are. They're that 3rd line right there. So y'all can see those. If you have an interest, grab a hold of that. And then 30 years as a college educator. So another thing I can appreciate. Volunteers for the Global Heart of Peace Initiative and the World Ministry of Prayer. So how about that? Illustrious, you might say. Sharri, tell us what you have, please.
Oh, thank you so much. I am just tickled pink to be here. This is one of my favorite topics. It's called After the Resolutions. Raise your hand if you've never made a resolution and then forgotten it before the 7th of January. Ever? I don't like the term resolutions. The very name implies failure. It's resolution, repeating a solution that didn't work the first time. Excuse me. Consider instead intention, which is choice with the involvement of heart and feet, as opposed to resolutions, which are really just recycled wishes with no meat on their bones. So why set resolutions? Well, the idea is to gain direction, focus, and measurable milestones. It's much easier to tell if you're getting where you want to go if you've got some idea how far you've come, where you started, and where the target was. So how do we go about setting reasonable, achievable resolutions? Well, first, we have to determine what resources we have. Now, you're going to laugh when I tell you what the resources are, but it'll work out. Trust me. Okay, the first one is strengths. And your strengths are talents, skills, personality traits, and character traits. But talents and skills are not the same thing. And personality traits and character traits are not the same thing. Talents are gifts from God, abilities or capabilities or possibilities that are born in us as individuals. Some of us can sing and some of us can dance and some of us can draw pictures. Skills are abilities that we have developed through practice, through study. And skills are much easier to develop if they're based on talents, but they don't have to be based on talents. Most of us can learn to do something if we try hard enough. We may not ever get to be really good at it unless it was a talent. And the way you can usually tell talents from skills is that talents make us feel good about ourselves. We love ourselves when we're doing that thing. I mean, can you imagine Pavarotti not loving music? I, on the other hand, sing only in the shower and then with the door shut. And there's nobody living here but me. But I recognize the limits of my skills. Personality traits and character traits are sort of analogous to talents and skills. Personality traits are aspects of who we are that we acquired as we were growing up. Now, my personal opinion is that babies are born knowing everything they're ever going to need to know, completely at one with the mind of God. And then in the process of growing up, they become adulterated. We pile so much stuff on the outside of that perfection that it disappears. And sometime in your young adulthood, if you're lucky, 25 to 30 in that range, we realize that that's happened to us. And we spend the rest of our lives peeling off all the gunk that's been piled on top of us to get back to the perfection that was always there in the beginning. So that's where personality traits come from. This is how my mom did it, so this is how I do it. This is how my teachers do it, so this is how I do it. This is how my big brother does it, so this is how I do it. This feels good, so this is how I do it. Personality traits are the things that people think of when they hear your name. Your traits, on the other hand, are conscious choices. We choose whether to do something that we know is not in our best interest. We choose whether to be of service to the people around us, or to our country, or to our planet. That character trait it's a personality trait with feet on it, with bones in it, with substance. Everybody has all of these things. We are not always aware of what they are. And it's probably a really good idea, at least once a decade, if not once a year, to sit down and write the list. It will not be the same every time you write it, because we are not static. We grow, we expand. So the next resource that we have is weaknesses. Now, there are two kinds of weaknesses. There are self-identified weaknesses, and there are externally identified weaknesses. My mother told me my whole life that I was ordinary because she didn't want me to be conceited. It was a serious shock to me that I was responsible for all the disappointments I'd had in my life because I expected other people to do something just because I would do it because I was ordinary. That was an externally identified weakness. My mother gave me that weakness. And as soon as I understood that she had given it to me, I was able to let that sucker go. There are also self-identified weaknesses, such as I only sing in the shower with the door shut. Because I know that there's nobody on earth who would pay to hear me sing, and several people who would pay not to. But I love to sing. It's one of the reasons I go to church, because I can sing with a lot of people and nobody can hear me. Self-identified and externally identified weaknesses are resources because of two things. One, they're points of growth. They're places where we have the potential to grow, to expand, to improve. But the second one is the one that's important. They are not necessarily true. My mother told me I was ordinary because she thought she was protecting me from conceit. Wasn't true. I wasn't ordinary. My choir director told me that there was nobody on earth who'd pay to hear me sing, and no choir that didn't sound better with me in it, because I have a voice that fills in the cracks. Unfortunately, if there are no cracks to fill in, it sounds pretty bad. That one was true. I thought I was left-handed and that was a handicap. And then I was in an accident and broke my left wrist and had my hand in a cast for 6 weeks and discovered I'm ambidextrous and I can write with my right hand. That was not a real weakness. It was just one that I imagined. So weaknesses really are resources because they're places we can look for potential. And that's the only thing we really need to recognize in our whole life is potential, because that's our growing edge. The third resource is opportunities for growth. Weaknesses are a variety of opportunity for growth, but sometimes there are opportunities for growth that we don't know about or that we haven't examined. And I put them in 4 categories. Personal, for instance, I've just begun a PhD program. Big opportunity for growth for me. And it's the fulfillment of a lifelong goal. There are professional, and that could be considered a professional growth thing, but for me, it's not. For me, it's personal. Nobody cares if a minister has a PhD or not. It's just something I always wanted. But professional training that you can get your company to pay for, or professional skills that you could develop that would make you more valuable to your company, that sort of thing is definitely an opportunity for growth. Financial could be an investment opportunity. It could be starting a business of your own, which I guess counts as professional too. It could be choosing to become, this has been one of my lifelong dreams too, to become a philanthropist. I would love to win that $82 trillion lottery and spend the rest of my life giving it away. Would that not be the coolest job on the face of the earth? And of course, educational, because some people see education, as I do, as a goal in itself. Learning is fun, and learning makes me more of whatever it is I am or want to be. So those are types of opportunities for growth. So you sit down with a pencil and paper and you make these lists, and then how do you use those resources? Well, you start with visioning. Is there anybody who's never heard of visioning? One of my favorite expressions is that God never shuts up. Inspiration is always flowing, and it's not a trickle. It's a whitewater cataract of information, of guidance, of imagination and wisdom that pours into every human mind all the time, 24/7, 365. And we are so good at ignoring it. We can cut it off just like that. But what if we chose to listen to the guidance? What if there was a process we could use to tune into the guidance and fine-tune our awareness and get the answers to questions we really needed, like what should I do with the next year of my life? There's a process called visioning, and in its most basic form, it just is 4 questions. You just ask 4 questions. The first one is, what is Spirit's highest vision for my life? And you make yourself comfortable. You sit in a good chair. You trust the chair to support you. You ask that question, and then you shut up and listen. You don't edit what you hear. You don't argue with what you hear. You don't yabbit what you hear. You just write it down. And then, before you examine what you wrote, you ask the next question. The next question is, what God qualities must I embrace and embody in order to manifest that vision, Spirit's highest vision for my life? And once again, you write it down, you shut up and listen. You don't edit, you don't yabbit, you don't argue, you just write them down. The third question, what must I release to unblock the manifestation of this vision? This is the one where you're most going to want to argue and yabbit, but don't do it. Just write it down. And the last question is my favorite one, because I always expect the answer to be no, and there's always something there. The last question is there anything else I need to know right now? And sometimes the answer is, yeah, this is all true. Again, just write it down. And then you can start to create what are called SMART goals, which is another name for intentions. SMART's an acronym. S stands for specific. M is measurable. A is achievable. R is relevant. And T is timely. Specific, it's awfully hard to get somewhere if you don't know where it is you're trying to go. Measurable. How do I know if I've achieved it if I don't have some way to calculate my rate of success? Has to be achievable. I would dearly love to fly an airplane, but I'm pretty sure there's no flight company in the world that's going to let a 73-year-old woman take flying lessons. I just don't think it's going to happen. So I'll pick something that's a little more achievable, like getting a PhD. Has to be relevant. It has to be something that matters to me. Why would I want to set a goal that didn't change my life or change my world? And it has to be timely. And timely doesn't mean tick, 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 tick. Timely means it has to be something that can be done within a reasonable amount of time, like, say a year, though I personally think that goal, intention setting and visioning should be done quarterly. it's much easier to eat an elephant if you chop it up in pieces first. Or a bunch of grapes, if you just pick them one at a time, stuffing that whole bunch in your mouth is not going to work very well. The effect of setting these SMART goals, of creating intentions instead of resolutions, is that they become not only possible, not only probable, but absolutely real with capital letters. It changes how you look at your world. It changes how you live in your world, how you interact with your world. It changes your world. So let's take this idea into meditation by comparing resolutions and intentions. I'll invite you to just relax in your chairs and shut your eyes if that's comfortable. And listen with the ears of your heart so that you can really take ownership of the words you hear. We're going to compare resolutions and intentions. Resolutions are the recycling of old ideas that didn't work the first time. Intentions are commitments with heart, mind, and spirit that yield success. Resolutions comprise a wish list. Intentions comprise a transformation plan. Resolutions wither away. Intentions take root. Resolutions foster guilt. Intentions generate gratitude. Resolutions become shoulda, coulda, woulda. Intentions become can, will, done. Resolutions are vague. Intentions are specific. Resolutions trickle top down, and intentions grow bottom up. Resolutions yield imaginary results. Intentions yield evolutionary results. Resolutions start big and dwindle. Intentions start basic and build. Revolutions spring from ego. Intentions spring from consciousness. Resolutions dissolve. Intentions ignite. So my invitation is that you release resolutions. Embrace intentions. Have a really happy new year. So